Hello, everyone, and welcome to the board meeting for the Robla Elementary School District. We'll go ahead and we'll call this meeting to order. We'll start with closed session. There were no actions that were taken in closed session. So with that, we will move on to the Pledge of Allegiance. Do we have our video? I got a flag here behind me.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Excellent, excellent. Okay, let's go ahead and move on to roll call. All board members are present and accounted for. No, once again, no action taken in closed session. And at this moment, we will adopt the agenda and entertain a motion to adopt the agenda.
So moved. Second.
It's been moved and seconded. All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Abstentions? Motion carries unanimously. Item communications, public comment. This is an opportunity for individuals who'd like to speak to the board on an issue that is not on the agenda to do so. What I would encourage you to do is we will be looking for your comments in, I'm assuming you're watching this on YouTube. We'll be looking for your comments there in YouTube, and we will read your comments. So we'll go ahead and give you a few minutes to get that going. By the way, please know that just because we may not comment on something that is that you speak about, but please know that we are listening intently and we'll do what we can to address it. It would help if I turned my own sound down now, wouldn't it? Okay. I'm looking here. I don't see any comments. Okay, so with that, we will move on to reports. And if comments do appear or someone does note that they wanted to make a comment, we will go ahead and come back to that and read that comment. Okay, so with that, we'll move on to reports. And we will start with the Robla Education Foundation. No report from the Robla Education Foundation. Or do any of the board members have reports from
Nope.
No.
Okay, doesn't have one from we don't have one from. Okay, so then we'll move on to employee associations, CSEA or RTA.
So I actually, excuse me, good evening. I have a report that the presidents have asked me to read. It's a joint report from Leah Boylan, the president of RTA, and Lydia Hagar, the president of Robla CSEA. And it reads, Leslie, good evening. RTA has been working on parent and student engagement and has been seeing a great impact on the amount of changes that we now have to communicate with their families. Everyone at RTA is working on learning new skills in the rapidly changing time. Teachers have learned new ways to engage students through the use of hands-on items and through the use of new technology. CSEA members continue to work with most classifications being on site. Food service workers and bus drivers continue to serve the children in our community with nutritious meals using the Meals on Wheels program. Our maintenance, grounds, and custodial crews are working hard to ensure our schools will have a clean and safe environment. The office staff and technology crew continue to meet the needs of our families while adapting to safe distancing procedures. Our instructional assistants, librarians, and bilingual community outreach assistants have adapted quickly to the daily challenges of working mainly from home. None of us could have predicted that the effects of this pandemic would last this long. We are both proud of the way our members have stepped up to the plate, working diligently to provide the students in the district with the finest distance learning experience. We want to thank the board for supporting us through this unprecedented time. Thank you.
Okay. And now we'll move on to Superintendent Report.
Great. Again, good evening, everyone. First of all, I wanted to spend a few minutes talking about reopening. And I did want to mention that we are moving forward with being ready. We're not sure when it will happen. We are watching the timing, and that will be when the county moves into the red tier. We have now assigned staff and students to either a distance learning program or a transition model program, cohort A or B, based upon parent preference. We have now completed our air quality study, and we have now completed our COVID-19 testing. I'm sorry, we have not completed our COVID-19 testing, but are planning around working towards having a plan for COVID-19 testing. We are waiting to hear from the state around guidelines for type and frequency of testing, and whether or not staff does need to be tested, but whether or not students are required to be tested as well. And we are hoping, there are rumors that the state will indeed offer some incentives to districts to open, and we are waiting to hear from the state around that issue as well. In regards to vaccinations for educators, we get rapidly changing information. Almost daily, something new comes out. We are working collaboratively to stay in touch with the County Office of Education, County Public Health Department, and the state to see what is happening in terms of vaccinations. We have heard from the county that educators will be notified that they can begin to be vaccinated next week, beginning the 16th. So we're waiting that to happen officially. And we are grateful to Twin Rivers, who has also been working on a plan with a clinic to see if they can make something happen maybe in a different way. We do want to be clear that it is the expectation in the Robla School District that employees do indeed get vaccinated. We will not mandate vaccinations for our employees, but we do hope that they will all get vaccinated so that we can create the safe environment for our students and staff when we return to school. Mr. Castillo is here tonight. I wanted to give him maybe a few minutes to just give the board a quick update from the business department.
Thank you, Superintendent Reyes. We attend 2 January Governor's Budget Workshop. One was presented by the School Services of California, and the other one by Capital Advisors of Sacramento, that it was hosted by the Sacramento County Office of Education. During these presentations, there were 3 key points from the governor's January budget. First, the cash deferrals will not continue for 21-22. The state has enough cash to pay the cash deferrals from this year. This is good news, as the last time that the state did deferrals, they lasted for 4 years. The second point is also good news. It appears that there will not be a state budget cuts. You remember in the past, we talked about possible budget cuts. The January proposal includes a small COLA cost of 3.84%. And the third point, something that Superintendent Reyes mentioned in his presentation, is that the state, the governor is proposing significant one-time funds to reopen schools. There has been a lot of pushback to the governor's proposal regarding the requirements, specifically regarding the testing and the time to start. And the legislature and the governor are still negotiating. So compared to 7 months ago, when in June 2020, the budget is significantly better, but it's very volatile. It's something that we're watching it very careful daily, weekly. So that is the budget update regarding the governor's January proposal.
Okay. Thank you, Mr. Castillo. We thought it would be important for the board because the governor does release information about the budget in January, that the board has that up-to-date information. So thank you, Mr. Castillo, for staying on top of that. I did want to also mention tonight that our schools are working very hard to stay connected to our families, even during this difficult time. And they're being quite innovative. I would like to kind of mention that Bell Avenue and Main Avenue both held parent nights to help parents understand the important role that they play in the education of their child. So they are customizing that to their school and their grade levels, and it's exciting to see schools reaching out to our families in that way. At Glenwood School, Dr. Gutierrez continues to do his coffees with the principal. Of course, they're done virtually now. So he is making sure that he is keeping that connection to his families. The schools continue to do monthly materials pickups. I know that one was held today, and we saw parents coming in with their children. It's really cute to see that the kids always want to come as well. I think they're just really anxious just to be on a school campus and maybe get a glimpse of their teacher as they pick up materials for the next month. And then, of course, we continue with our parent empowerment dinners. I want to be sure the board is aware that our next dinner is planned for February 23rd. Which is not very far away now. And we once again have dinners donated by the Foods for Family program. So 300 families will be able to pick up a dinner for 4 at either Glenwood or Bell Avenue between 3:30 and 4:30. And then they can go home for the program and watch that on a Zoom meeting. Update on the administration building construction. We are nearly complete. I think the rain was perfectly timed. I think we just about poured the last of the concrete this week. So that was not hindered. And we are now waiting for the arrival of an installation of furniture for the building. So it appears that we will be in there moving in before too long. And we are excited to show the board their new boardroom. Hopefully, maybe by our next board meeting. It may need to wait till March. We will see. And then my final topic tonight is just about our resilience plan. The Robla Resilience Project continues. We continue to have monthly sessions with all staff. All 300 employees are invited to attend, and we are working with our consultants to make sure that we are engaging with our employees around systemic racism in our country, as well as anti-racism strategies, and just kind of educating everyone in a way that helps them to be more reflective. We continue to modify the program based upon feedback from participants. We're excited that we will soon be adding the resource of a resilience website that is nearly ready to launch. And thank you, as always, to Adam Vivier, our IT director, who puts these, we come up with the great ideas and Adam makes them happen. So that website will be launched soon. And then we will be engaging in the second phase of resilience, which will be a developmental sprint, where we will give the opportunity for 60 of our employees to kind of take this work and make it personal and set some personal goals around anti-racism. And that developmental sprint will be launched on February 24th and will run for the next 5 weeks or so. So we will bring updates around that as well. And that is my report.
Excellent. Okay, move on to board member reports. We'll start off with Trustee Cardona. Anything to report? Okay.
Nothing to report.
Nothing to report. Trustee Devine?
Nothing to report.
Nothing to report. And Trustee Boyd.
Nothing here.
Okay. And Trustee Barnes.
Very briefly, Monday, Ruben and I had our labor management meeting with the union presidents, and it went very well. And just want to say to our union leaders that we really enjoy this meeting and making sure that we keep the relationship going. So thank you very much. That's all I have to report.
Okay. And the only thing that I have to report on is the Region 6 for the California School Boards Association. We had a Zoom call last week, and we were pretty much just talking about, well, a lot of what Ruben was talking about in terms of plans for reopening, how folks are handling reopening and things along those lines. It seems like, at least in our region, we seem to be as much on top of things or ahead of the game as a lot of other districts in the area. A big part of that is the MOUs with our collective bargaining unit. So big thanks to them for working to make sure that when the time comes that we do need to reopen, or we are able to reopen, we'll be more than prepared to be able to do so. So thank you. All right, and that will be it for reports. We'll now move on to presentations and information, and we will start off with item A, GEO funding bond sale and facilities update.
So Emilio Flores is here from Caldwell Flores and Winters, and as the board knows, they approved this refunding, and we have now held the sale, and we wanted to give the board an update on the details of how that went. Mr. Flores, welcome.
Thank you. First off, just wanted to welcome everybody back. I know we've had a meeting since our return from the winter break, but it feels like so long ago, at least I think probably for the CPO and I, who have been working on this particular project, I think from the Christmas break. But overall, extremely excited to share the results of the refunding with the board. I think overall we were able to achieve the goals and exceed them in many ways. As the board may recall, we came to the back in the January meeting, present the opportunity to refinance a number of the district's outstanding bonds from its 2014 authorization. In particular, we're looking to refund bonds from Series 2015A, which were issued back in February of 2015, and Series 2015B, which was issued in November of 2015. We were successful in selling $6.4 million in general obligation refunding bonds, and which were well received by the market. One of the things that I just want to point out, which I think is a credit to Gerardo and the team at Robla, is the speed at which we were able to complete this transaction. We had first started talking about between Christmas and New Year's. We were able to get to the board on January 14th. We were able to sell bonds less than 2 weeks later on January 28th. And the transaction is currently scheduled to close on February 25th. The reason why I bring that up is that it's quite important to recognize that the bond markets, as well as interest rates, continue to move on a day-to-day basis. Since we sold the bonds on January 28th, interest rates have increased by 0.07%. That does not sound like a lot, but just looking at overall, it's a 6% increase in overall interest rates, which would have corresponded to about a 6% decrease in our overall savings level. So our ability to move quickly and to take advantage of a relatively stable interest rate market at the end of January provided us with an opportunity for additional savings to the district taxpayers. In January, we had estimated to the board that we would be able to generate savings of approximately $600,000. I'm more than happy to report that we were able to achieve savings of closer to $760,000 in taxpayer savings, almost just above $750,000 in savings. This represents a reduction in the interest cost to taxpayers of 5% down to about 2.3%. Back in January, we had estimated that we'd be able to reduce it to about 2.47%. So once again, able to outperform that particular metric. I think that the most important thing here is, when do taxpayers see this reduction and how is it reflected? So as we had talked about at the January board meeting, the district has no financial gain from refinancing these bonds. There's no additional dollars that are generated for projects. There's not extra dollars that Superintendent CBO gets to use for other things. It's truly a benefit to the taxpayers of the district. And so the savings will be represented in a decrease in the overall property taxes paid by property owners within the Robla School District or the Robla school bonds. What's really important to point out here is that before everybody calls next year and says, hey, you said my taxes were going to go down, they may have gone up. What's important to recall, folks, is that the property tax bills do not reflect solely Robla. Obviously, there is the high school district, Twin Rivers, and other folks as well. But as it pertains to the Robla GO bonds, specifically, the savings we pass on to taxpayers through a reduced property tax bill over the remaining life of the bonds. Like I said, the sale was extremely successful. There's a tremendous amount of demand for the bonds. We had about 3 times as much demand as we had for supply, which allowed us to negotiate that lower rate. Overall, once again, just want to reiterate my my appreciation to Gerardo and his staff for helping us get this done so quickly. It truly is it was truly a team effort, and to get a bond refinancing done in about 45 days is not typical, but it was made possible by the assistance from staff. So with that, I'm happy to answer any questions regarding the refinancing that you may have before going into the facilities report.
Any questions? Does not appear to be any.
Member Boyd seemed like he was
Excuse
asking.
me, I'm
questions.
sorry. I'm sorry. I was muted there. I don't have a question directed to Emilio, just the superintendent of the board. I'm just wondering, this is great financial news to the taxpayer. There's some way that we could send that out to the district on what the board has done in plain language to let people know that basically we reduced it, and maybe mention, like Emilio said, how it may not reflect directly on your tax bill because the others are encompassed with it, but we have dropped yours by better than 50%, which ought to be good news for Robla.
Well, just for clarification, for the bonds that we refinance, we absolutely cut the interest rate in half. That does not mean that the tax associated with all of Robla school bonds drops by half.
Oh, yeah, right. Yeah.
So
go ahead. I'm sorry.
No problem. I just want to make sure that the public recognizes that the tax bill will not be halved for next year. There will be a reduction, and it will be proportional to the folks' tax burden. But yes, we were able to reduce the interest rate for these particular bonds by half.
But just something to let them know that we're still, even though they passed the bond, we're always working in their interest to do the best we can.
Mr. Flores, in your working with other districts and transactions such as this, are you aware of any district that has created any kind of mailer or communication around a refunding to the community?
Certainly. So there have absolutely been instances where there may be a brief press release that's put together and put out. Pardon me. Knowing Robla's relationship in terms of with its communities and so forth, and its own distribution network, if you will, for news, it's probably something we could partner with the district in terms of putting a piece together and then having the district disseminate it as it wishes. In extremely political places, I've seen it go out as a mailer, but typically it's either electronic communication or a press release to the local papers. If we were like in, I don't know, if we were in Beverly Hills or somewhere in LA County, that was, especially around election time, you may see it on a mailer, but overall, I think a press release or some type of communication to the community as a whole would suffice.
Okay, so why don't Ms. Flores, you and I can maybe talk a little bit more about that and see if we can come up with something.
Absolutely.
Thank you.
Excellent idea, Dennis.
Thank you.
Shall we move to the facilities reports?
Yes.
Mr. Flores.
So just an update to the board of where we are. I do apologize, there's a typo on the bottom right hand of this page. I'm still living in 2020 somehow, some way, but that should read 2021. Robla Elementary construction continues going forward, and we'll talk about it briefly. Same thing with Bell Avenue. I think the most important thing to point out to the board is we've been in coordination with the principal at Glenwood, as well as our partners, to determine if we can begin construction at that site. Glenwood consists of two primary projects. One is the construction of a 4-classroom kindergarten and SDC classroom wing, as well as the modernization of the existing campus and classrooms, library and media center for 21st century learning environments. It's a project that we have strategically placed or worked on in such a way that we could affect its start date when we thought it would be most convenient. And so we've been working on finding a way to do that. Up until this point, we've been trying to find a way to take advantage of the fact that we do not have students on campus. It's worth noting that we remain committed to working and finding solutions for when students do return. That's something that has been obviously at the forefront of our minds in the last month or so, in conversations with the site principals, as well as with the superintendent and CBO. And so that's something we continue to look at. But is our intention to move forward with construction at Glenwood, to start seeing things move around towards the later part of March and into the early part of April. At Robla, if you have driven by recently, we are framing on the second floor. We were able to get rid of a lot of the water that was on site from our last set of storms. One of the things I do want to commend Clark Sullivan, the contractor over there for, as well as the architect, is that we were very committed early on to making sure that we did the preliminary paving of the parking lot, the new parking lot over there. And the reason why that's so important is it's allowed us to have a dry space, or relatively dry space, to stage all the materials. And if you look at this particular photo, you can start seeing that the site around the foundation has become obviously wet with the storms that we had. And if we had not paved the parking lot up front, it would be a lot more difficult for us to move materials to continue on. But I think overall, we're making tremendous progress on the second story over at at Robla. And we are currently in the process of coordinating with the site as well as district staff in preparing for bringing back potentially students if that does come to pass, as well as staff. So we're working on ways in which that we minimize the impact of construction on that. We've been very fortunate up to this point from a construction standpoint. And once again, that's a very selfish perspective, but not having students on site has been a tremendous help in terms of getting some of the larger equipment in and getting us to a point at Robla where we've been able to accelerate some of the construction as a result. So overall, we are looking forward to having students back on campus potentially, and we're obviously making sure that any points in which we feel that need to be secured or safety to be addressed, we're making those preparations, continue to have those in place in case students do come back for the school year. At Bell Avenue, we do have a board item later on this evening, and this is kind of a photo of some of that work, but we've completed the demolition of the portables as well as the existing asphalt which they sat on. And we're currently in the process of preparing the site in terms of grading, as well as looking at removal of some of the dirt due to some abatement. But overall, we're still in demolition, and we're going to start working on final grading so that we can get forward with the foundations that we have. One thing about Bell Avenue, since we're on it, and we will talk about this a little further later on the action items, but one of the decisions that we had to make, similar to what we did over at Robla, is that we wanted to make sure that we could continue having progress over at the site. The recent storms were heavily saturated the site, and we wanted to make sure that we had the ability to continue to move forward. And so we'll talk about the change order that's on the agenda later in this particular board meeting, but I do want to take a step back and talk about change orders in general. There are typically three types of change orders that we will see throughout our projects, either at Robla or at Bell or at Glenwood or what we've seen at Maine and Taylor previously. One is what we call an allocation. So when we put together the budgets with our contractors, what we do is we put aside allocations for certain expenses. So for example, over at Robla, we knew that there would be a number of issues regarding abatement of certain materials on that site. We created an allocation for that. We didn't know the extent to which that abatement would be, but we did put money within the budget in order to address some of that. And in fact, we actually had to come back to the board and ask for some additional dollars because the abatement that was on site was actually far greater than what we had thought previously through our consultants. Another type of, and typically that allocation is, like I said, we come back to the board and we're allocating money from a certain line item within the budget towards those dollars. Another type of change order that which you may be familiar with is what we call a change order in addition to the GMP. And so this is a particular line item that says, you know what, either it was unforeseen condition, something that we did not anticipate. A good example of that, folks, is when we were at Taylor, there was a trans site, which means pipe, which means there was a large pipe running through Taylor, underground Taylor, that was not on any maps, did not show up on any utility studies. But when we hit the pipe, we had to fix it or remove it or reroute it. And that's an example of an unforeseen condition. Lastly, the last one I would just for education of the board is what we call a in lieu of. So for instance, there may be a certain expense that we have identified. Let's say, for instance, one type of drywall material, and for one reason or another, it's either found to be inadequate in terms of what we wanted to use it for, or it may be a different bill of material we want to have. So what will happen is we'll switch out materials, and those types of change orders typically have no cost associated with them, or very little cost associated with them. But generally, those are the three types of change orders that you'll see. One that is an allocation within the contract that's already there, in addition to the contract that we have, or a swapping out of materials within a line item. In the case of Bell Avenue, the change order that we'll be bringing to you later in the meeting pertains to an add to the contract. And what's being proposed over there is that we want to treat the soil with lime in order to stabilize the site, in order to control the amount of moisture we have on the site, in order to continue doing grading work, in order to continue the foundation work, in order to keep us on our current schedule. You may ask, hey, Emilio, we're building in the middle of January and February. Why haven't you accounted for rain? And the answer to that is we have. Within the contract, we do have what contractually what's called rain day delays. And what's important to recognize about rain delays is that even though work may not be going forward, there are two consequences to any day that we, quote, can't work on the site. The first one is cost. For every day that we do not perform work on the site, there are what we call general conditions. This is the money that pays for the equipment on site. It pays for the security cameras. It pays for the staff personnel, the superintendents that maintain the safety of the site. And typically, in the case of Bell, that runs about $5,000 a day. So to do nothing costs about $5,000 a day. In addition to that, for days that we do not have work that's being performed, those are days that are added onto the back end of the schedule. And it's very hard for us to get days back in the schedule. So there are two costs to any time that it rains, or substantial amount of rain comes onto the site. One is cost, and the other one is time. And so in doing an analysis of what we thought would be the potential delays related to the latest storms and anticipating some additional storms coming down the pipe, like one today, what we've done is done an analysis to say, okay, what is it that we can do in order to continue to do work and not incur either rain delays or any other types of delays due to the soils? And this lime sheet is what's going to come out to. The simple math is that we thought that there would be about 30 to 45 days worth of delay caused by rain. If you extrapolate that out, that would be a cost of approximately 150 to 100 or about $200,000 worth of general conditions. And so what we did was we found a solution, which was this chemical treatment, which is perfectly safe. And in fact, it's something that we did over at Robla when we entered into the rain season as well. And so that's where the change order is coming from over there. The reason why it's not a change order within the contract is because we want it's not within the scope, because we want to keep some of those rain delay days for other reasons and other rationales. The other step we could have taken, which would have been not necessarily as productive, is to add additional rain days to the contract. And the reason why we don't do that is because if we create ways in which the contractor can continue to do work or continue to delay work, it incentivizes them to use the days that they have within the contract. And so we found this to be the most effective way to move forward with that. So that's the rationale as to what has occurred over there. We can talk a little bit more in depth about the change order when it comes up later. The one thing I do want to make sure that I communicate to the board is we plan for rain. Rain does come through. In the case of Bell, what happened was the rain came at the absolute worst time possible, which is when we demoed all the asphalt. It's when we exposed all the dirt, and we need to make sure that it's stabilized so that we can continue to work on that site. So more than happy to answer these questions either later on in this presentation or when we get to the item later on. But I do want to explain that we do plan for rain, we do plan for these things. It's just in this particular case, it hit us at the exact moment in which our site was probably the most vulnerable. Over at Glenwood, we are moving forward. Superintendent, as well as the site principal and CFW have been working on a transition plan of how to house teachers on site upon their return. That would allow us to move forward with the construction of the kindergarten classrooms, as well as a portion of the modernization during the school year. We are working towards that right now, and we hope to come back to the board later this month or in early March with a finalized GMP and seeking authorization to proceed with that project as well. I think I covered most of this in my rest of my summary. What I will just point out real quick on the construction projects is that we have benefited from students not being on campus. We continue to coordinate with everyone on the return, the potential return of students onto campus. And we will be working diligently and in parallel with and implementing the district's plan to return to schools if that is indeed activated. And we are looking forward to continuing our work into the rest of the season. So with that, I'm happy to answer any questions we may have, generally speaking, about the facilities or anything else that I've spoken to at this point.
Okay, does anyone have any questions? Looking at my fellow board members.
None here.
Okay, no questions.
I have a
Excellent.
question.
Oh, yes.
You
Sharona.
said that you've benefited from not having students on campus. How much time for the construction, everything has the district saved overall from the original completion date to what we're predicting now?
So I have not quantified that in that way. What I would tell you is that our ability to move equipment, large equipment, has benefited. Our ability to schedule a downtime, as the board may be aware, there was a number of utility switchovers we had to do over at Robla, related both to the admin and also to the new school site. And so, for instance, over there, the kitchen was actually shut down for a number of weeks. And I believe, Superintendent Reyes, you can correct me, but I believe that kitchen's coming back online, I think later this week or next week. So, for example, we've been able to do certain projects and move forward with certain areas with minimal disruption to campus. So, for example, if students had been on campus and we had to maintain operations at the Robla NPR as a kitchen, we would have had to resort to weekend work or after hours work, and a lot of that stuff would have costs associated with it. So I have not quantified that. It's something I can ask the contractors kind of to look at, but it's things like that where we've been able to move in and out of those sites without disturbing the educational program if the students had been on site.
Right. Okay, thank you.
Absolutely.
Okay, any additional questions, comments? All right, with that, we will move on to the consent agenda. I will entertain a motion to approve.
So moved.
So moved.
It's been moved and seconded. All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, abstentions, motion carries unanimously. Action items. Action item A, contract for Dr. Starsky Wilson for virtual keynote speaker presentation at parent dinner.
I'll speak to this, just reminding the board, as I mentioned earlier in my report, that we do have our upcoming Black History Month focused parent empowerment dinner that we do every February. And we have, we last year with our speaker being Ruby Bridges, we set our bar pretty high, and we continue to try to engage important leaders in the African-American community to be our keynotes here. Dr. Reverend Starsky Wilson is the new president of the Children's Defense Fund. And just to remind the board that the Children's Defense Fund are the creators of Freedom School. And Freedom School has become an important part of the work that we do in the Robla School District each summer. So this is a very logical thing to do, to have Mr. Wilson come and speak to us. Dr. Wilson, I'm sorry. And Mr. Roberts is the one who reaches out to these people and finds them wherever they may be in the country, just as we had Ms. Bridges come in from New Orleans last year. So we're proposing to the board that they approve this contract to have Dr. Wilson, I'm sorry, to be our speaker for our dinner coming up on the 23rd.
Okay, with that, I will entertain a motion.
So move.
Second.
I'm assuming it's a motion to approve.
Yes.
Okay.
Or
It's been
I guess
moved and
it's
seconded.
moved.
Is there any discussion? We'll move
Well, I just have a quick question. Ruben, can you tell me again how we do the actual dinner?
So the dinner, and this is what we've been doing this year during the school closure. So families will be able to pick up a dinner between 3:30 and 4:30. We have established that's at 2 sites. There will be 300 dinners for 4 that will be available to Robla families. And they can just drive through. Our administrators are the ones who oversee the distribution of these. The meals are donated. This is happening again this month as it did in September, where the food is donated by Food for Families, prepared by local chefs. So it's good for them and good for us, and it's wonderful food. And that will happen from 3:30 to 4:30, as I said. And then the program will happen after that, where families can come into the Zoom and hear, they will see a slideshow of student artwork. They will hear a choir of African-American singers, and then they will hear Dr. Wilson's talk, all on Zoom.
Thank you.
Okay, is there any further discussion? Hearing none, we'll move forward to a vote. All those in favor, please say aye.
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 Opposed? Abstentions? Motion carries 4-0-1. Okay, moving on to CSBA Delegate Assembly Ballot. I'm assuming everyone had a chance to kind of take a look at it. So in Region 6, we have 5 candidates that are up this year, or 5 seats that are available. One of the person who had one of these seats, Bobby Singh, is actually now the mayor of Oakland. I'm not Oakland, Elk Grove, of Elk Grove. So big difference. But in any case, so there were only 4 candidates for 5 seats. The 2 that are starred there are board members that I am familiar with. Lisa Kaplan and Ed Short have been phenomenal on the delegate assembly at CSBA. The other 2 board members I am not familiar with. And if we would so desire, we can actually write in the name of a candidate if we wanted to as well. So I'll just ask, what's the pleasure of the board?
I like to say that I'm somewhat familiar with Mr. Rhodes, and I would certainly endorse putting him, voting for him too.
Okay. Okay, with that, if no one has anybody that they want to suggest that we add on, I would suggest that we at least vote for all of the board members that are listed there. So if the board is okay with that, I'd like to entertain a motion to that effect.
So moved. I'll move to accept that slate of the 4 as presented there.
Okay. It's been moved and seconded. Is there any discussion? Hearing none, we'll move forward to a vote. All those in favor, please say aye.
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 Opposed? Abstentions? Motion carries unanimously.
I do have a question.
Yeah.
What happens with this open seat if it's not filled? Do you have any idea?
Well, they'll probably seek to have someone appointed. So they'll probably look to see if there's anybody interested in filling the seat.
Mm-hmm. And I agree with your assessment on Lisa Kaplan. I think she's done great service. Sorry, I know it's after the point where you asked for comments, but
she is definitely very knowledgeable, not just about her school district, but school issues in general, education issues in general. We don't always agree, but I at least like she brings a perspective that we need in education.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, moving on. We'll go to approval of prime contract change orders number 01 to construction services agreement with Flint Builders for adjustment of costs for the Bell Avenue Elementary School new classroom administration building.
So moved.
Second.
Okay, it's been moved and seconded.
So we've already, I'll just add here, right? Mr. Flores, thank you already for speaking to this item and kind of, how this process works. But again, if the board has any other questions or, would like any further detail, we can provide that.
We're gonna go eat in half an hour. We're having brisket.
Any questions? I'll just say I have to admit I was a little alarmed because it is a larger change order. I'm glad you answered my question. As I was like, okay, well, we knew it was going to kind of rain. So why? I mean, I would figure this is something that is a good idea and probably would have been in the contract, should have been in the contract in the first place. But that's why I guess that's also why I have no problem supporting the change order.
Yeah. So
Go ahead. I'm sorry.
I was just gonna add real quick. I think one of the things is that it's one of those things where it's one of those situations. Either you look great for doing it in the contract, or you look horrible for not doing it in the contract. And it's kind of one of those situations where, depending on what the weather system is going to do and when it's going to be. So, for instance, if we had put it in there as a contingency or line item, yes, it would be in there, but it's one of those things that it's just timing. And if the storm had hit 2 weeks later or 2 weeks earlier, and really what was the determining factor here was the amount of rain that actually fell, because it left to its own devices, it would take about 2.5 weeks for the site to dry out. And that, like I said, there's a cost associated with that, and there's a time associated with that. And absolutely agree that it's something we'll continue to look at and evaluate in terms of whether or not to put into contracts, or if we create an allocation or an allowance for that going forward. But no, I mean, certainly it was something that we all sat there and said, okay, well, we were a little more proactive at Robla with it, knowing that we're going into the wet season and we could time where we're going out. But, it was just the amount of rain was something that we had not necessarily foreseen in that short period of time. And just a quick story that I'll share with folks is we have another project in Sacramento County where it was dependent on importing soil. And the rain caused us a 15-day delay on us being able to move soil from one site to another site because we could not access the site where our soil was sitting. And so, that's just an example of, in that particular case, it wasn't about whether or not we treated it, is that we couldn't even move dirt from point A to point B to that storm.
I'm just going to say that the cost caught my attention too, and I was going to ask some questions. I really appreciate you addressing that. And at the same time, I felt, knowing the relationship we've had together with the district all these years, that there was going to be a good explanation for it. So thank you.
Well, especially now that I know that you used to do DTSC work and some other work and soils and everything else.
Okay, then any further discussion? Hearing none, we'll move forward to a vote. All those in favor, please say aye.
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 Opposed?
Aye. No, I'm voting for, sorry.
Okay.
Turn my mic on.
All right, opposed? Abstentions? Motion carries unanimously. Okay, move on to item 8, board member requests for future board items. So, Trustee Cardona,
No request.
no request. Trustee Devine,
No requests.
no request. Trustee Barnes,
No request, but I will say thank you to, I think it's Nicole, correct me wrong, Rubin if I'm wrong, who does the board policy updates and does a highlighting. Because I really appreciate that. I didn't say that before. I really appreciate the fact that they go through and do the differences for us. Although I thought it was kind of funny that on the new one, they highlighted everything. I thought that was interesting. But
we want to give credit where credit is due. That's Shari who is bringing those to us.
okay, well, thank you very much, Shari. So no request. I just wanted to make that comment.
all right, Trustee Boyd,
Yeah, I wasn't sure whether to bring this up during board reports or not, but I saved it for now. But I've been talking to Mr. Roberts and kind of working about addressing the socialization of our kids coming back to school after being gone so far. We were kind of anticipating the fall going back to school. And I've talked to a couple of the kind of supervisors just asking about extending the play programs. But it looks like we're going to go back a lot earlier. But this issue still exists. These kids haven't been together for a long time, and to just bring them back into the classroom, if there's some, like, I don't know what we could do, but, like during regular school year, we have the little thing for the families that need the services with the backpacks and all. I don't know if there's anything we can do. I know the pandemic is going to make it harder, but, and I wouldn't be surprised if you're already addressing this, Mr. Reyes, but just to bring them back and dump them in the classroom, I think we need to give them a little welcoming back of some sort, or whatever it is, just for the socialization aspect of it.
Yeah, well, I'll just say this. Yeah, I can do some investigation. Yeah, I'll talk to the principals about kind of what their plans are. Frankly, I think what we're most worried about is how do we stop them all from hugging each other.
Yeah, I know. That's it. That's what I'm saying. If we do something to get together, that's a big problem. Yeah. How can we do that and maintain distance too? But it's challenging times. But you know what? We're way ahead of everybody.
all righty. And then I have nothing to request. So with that, this meeting is adjourned. Thank you, everyone, who tuned in.
Okay.
Appreciate you tuning in. If you have any
Thank you.
questions or any comments, go to the board website and you can figure out how to contact each and every one of us. Folks, take
right.
care.
Thank you.
Good night.
Good night.
Thank you.
Good
Good
night.
night.